Welcome back to another episode of the Godfathers podcast with myself and Igor. This is episode 8, and today we decided to talk about preparing for fatherhood and the different nuances within the preparation to fatherhood. So maybe you're in the process of you've already conceived and you have a baby on the way, or you are yearning to conceive and you want to have a baby with your wife, or even just in general, you're looking for a partner to become a father. So we want to talk about the nuances, the categories, and the themes that may occur to need to be applied or inquired into to prepare for fatherhood. And some of these nuances may not occur to you as I've come to realize through my own experiences. You don't necessarily need to have a baby in your physical reality to begin the fathering journey. So I'll throw it to Igor now, say hello, and we'll get into it.
Hello, let's get into it.
Fantastic.
Yes, I'm full of content today. Well, what was it like for you, man? What do you think suggesting to new fathers or not want to be fathers, but fathers who are becoming fathers or want to become fathers or are in the preparation of becoming fathers? What is something you didn't know that you found out later that you wish someone had told you?
Good question. Um, I think the big one would be to start fathering those inner parts within myself. It's more so the reckless, the rebellious, the parts of me that were trying to remain, whether single or remain a young boy or just remain immature and attached to youthfulness and just hanging out with crowds that weren't moving me towards maturity and towards fatherhood. I think probably that would be the thing I wish I'd told was how to father these parts myself.
Hmm.
It took seeing you, and then there was two other older men on the path to start to actually be able to recognize this archetype within myself that was not completely whole or not completely embodied as I desired it to be.
Hmm.
Um, so I think that was the big one, and then another one is just a simple one. It's just like find someone who is doing this work and don't be shy. Just like actually lean into like it's you're stepping into territory that is ultimately unknown.
Hmm.
You don't know it till you know it, or you start to have these experiences of fathering, whether it's a person or a child or
Hmm.
reality.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I don't know about you, but I felt the father stuff begins to stir when I found out about that we had conceived. Not before the child had come out, but I think on some level I had probably went into denial or deflection or repression of certain aspects of um, my own father stuff and my resistance to the father, my father's shadow, my relationship with my father, my relationship to responsibility at the time that we had conceived. I just wasn't fully aware of that. To some extent, I was, but the anxieties had already started to stir at that point. How I was going to provide, what kind of parent would I make, all that sort of stuff. So I think that the fathering journey does begin at that stage, but potentially also earlier. Hey, like with the intention to become a father. Um, but I think as we've discussed in other podcasts, becoming a father should be, well, in my perception, should be irrelevant to conceiving a child. I think becoming a father should be something we should all aspire to do as fully grown men, to be able to father ourselves properly, to be able to father the moment of what's arising. I'm sitting in a um, waiting area at the doctor's. I don't know, I can't remember if I mentioned that story. And there's a child that's crying and the mother's struggling to handle that. It's like, does the father in me come alive to be able to hold some sort of a space there,
mm,
if not provide some sort of words or offer of assistance, but even just the space to provide a sense of safety and support to
mm,
the woman, to the mother, to the child. So that activated in me, and it was the first time I realized that the father had really come on board because it was taking responsibility for life itself, not just for my child, for me. So I think that every man should aspire to be that regardless.
mhm,
For the purposes of today, though, I think we're narrowing it down to, okay, you're having a child. How do you become a father? How do you step into that? Um, so, but so because men can go through life without ever becoming that,
mm,
and without any awareness around it, and without anything um, evident pushing them towards it. A child's the most evident thing that pushes them towards it. But really, the moment's always, I think, calling to a man to step into his father,
mhm,
such as the example that I gave before, or such as our addictions that we can't tame within ourselves, our addiction to pornography, men's addiction to pornography, to substance abuse, to work, um, habits that they don't like, that they cannot father within themselves, love that they cannot give themselves or to their colleagues or their work from an open hearted place of benevolence for their own growth, for their own development, which is a particular type of fatherly love. And now, as I say, that's really
mm,
interesting to think about it. There's different kinds of heart
mm,
love. It's like I can be as a man, I can love a woman, romantically as a masculine, but not necessarily as a fatherly love, where I
mm.
want the best for her and for her to grow and develop. That's a different kind of heart capacity of the father love. So I'm kind of tangentializing and rambling as I do, but I think that all these are valid points. And the question I think we're talking about today is how does a man actually, let's say they've listened to this podcast or they've felt the call or the child's on the way, and they're like, yeah, this resonates and I really want to step into a father. What do they need to do? Just based on what I said before, the first thing is to notice, I think, the stuff that comes up around it.
Mhm,
How am I going to look after this child? Is there
mhm,
anxiety around responsibility? Is there anxiety around the loss of freedom that you spoke of?
mm.
So I think the first thing is just to self-reflect. And I think it's to acknowledge what are the things in us that give us doubts or insecurities around that. Um, that would be the first thing, to map out our relationship to this impending journey of becoming a father. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you've made some really good points that I'm gonna poke at. I
Poke
think
away, poke away.
the poke away. I think what you said there before going into the last question. I just wanted to bring back to the different shades and textures of love that can come from a man. And I think father love is very, very different to romantic love or a loving of a hobby or loving of a, whatever it is, an activity or work. I think this father love is very, yeah, the benevolence of it is growth and expansion and encouragement and there's a holding, a staying with. And I think if you look at it like from that perspective, and you're starting to, I remember when when you were talking, I was like, oh, I remember the first time I sort of had that yearning for fatherhood, and it was when I was in prison, and my wife, well, we're now wife, but we were just partners in when I was in there, and she sort of challenged me because I said I didn't want kids. I was like, oh, I don't want kids, and I'd taken on old beliefs from my ex, and she said, well, you'd be a great dad. And I was like, oh, what, I don't know about that. And she's like, look at these guys. What are these guys like? And she's pointing at these like other prison inmates, and some of them were like, big dudes or whatever. And I saw what they were doing inside,
Mm-hmm.
being did just the doing the dumbest stuff. And then you see them with their child, and it's just a completely different person, which completely blew my mind. I was like, wait a second. I'm watching what they're doing inside, whether it's bashing people or standing over people or not doing that. but just engaging in things that are immature. But then with their kids, there's this love and there's this support and there's this encouragement, which just changed something into me. The intention grew from that. And that was probably the first moment for me was where fatherhood became. But there was, like you were sharing, there was doubt, there was anxiety, there was the rejection of the idea of it.
Hmm.
And I think if we go back to say that heart love is I wonder if it's about resting into the father archetype that I is the archetype always there? Is that God? Is that source? Are we resting into that to allow that expansion, that encouragement, that staying with that holding so that we can exhaust or purify the doubt or the anxiety or the resistance to moving towards becoming a father? And is that the process that we are missing? Is this sort of like, hey, like this archetype's always there, but it's about building a capacity to rest into it.
Yeah.
And there's going to be things in the way for us to be able to stay there. You'll bounce out because you
Yeah.
don't have the capacity. It's like, I'm about to have a fourth child in like, 8 or 9 weeks, and my capacity for this archetype has doubled. It's just, I don't know, probably doubled or tripled in the last sort of, 3 months, just the idea of a fourth coming in. And
Mm,
the levels in which I'm needing to father reality at the moment is there's no room for me to bounce into parts of myself that aren't offering that.
mm, mm,
And I'm noticing that when I do, is my reality falls to shit.
mm.
Arguments appearing, kids are fighting, my wife starts to just
Yeah.
collapse. So, so I guess to answer your question, or even to further the question, is like, how can we, how do you think we can increase our capacity if without having experienced a child? So if we're leading up to it, how can we increase our capacity
Mm.
to start to father reality?
Yeah. Well, I think there's many different roads that lead to Rome, right? I think there's people that are doing rightly so therapy or shadow work, for those who are familiar with that term. um, so people who are redefining a healthier relationship to their father, but then to God, because ultimately this archetype that we talk about of the father imprint is based on the image of the divine, of the benevolent God above us, the great Father above us, the Holy Father. I think there are rites of passages that are missing. I think that there are which are processes to undergo where layers of immature ego are shed, and we're able to step into more mature versions of ourselves, more mature not into more mature, but into archetypes themselves. It's impossible to kind of tap into those spaces without doing work on ourselves. Because if I'm carrying, I should be this as a father, be like me as a father, Igor, says Boris, my father, then it's like, well, that's programming my mind, whether I'm aware
Mm,
of it or not. And it's very hard to hear the purity of the divine speaking beyond that, or a benevolent voice, something that's not just passed down to me and I follow it word to word, but something that's telling me, no, be this or do this. So
mm,
it's more coming through me in the space to be a certain way with my child or with the moment or with myself. Um, so it's really, I think, a man's desire, first of all, to become a father, to become a good father, to understand that it's a potentially a lifelong journey of expansion of capacity, as you say, to become more and more embodied in the father and less out of the father, and therefore as a child or as an orphan, someone who within consciousness who is not connected to the father, to a
mm,
father in life, God, or my own inner father, or a mental father. Well, they're kind of orphans in life, especially if they've gone, fuck you to
Hmm.
my own father. He didn't give me this and that, and he was whatever, this and that. Then you're anti-father. You are an orphan within your psyche, within your consciousness, and therefore within your behavior in life. So I think awareness, desire, pardon me, not awareness, desire first to become a good father, the realization that it is such a big commitment, the awareness around all our stuff that's like comes up in the way of that.
Hmm.
And then ways of working with it, whether it's
Hmm.
shadow work, therapy, listening to podcasts such as this. James and I are putting together a program for father development. So things that can help them to step into that. It can be hard because it's like the whole bloke culture thing is, no, I don't need any help. I don't need to look at feelings. I can do this myself. I'll work it out. She'll be right, mate.
Yeah.
Thing. So we that type of ego, that type of self-assured, cocky, arrogant thing, usually underneath that betrays a lot of insecurities in itself, as we know. Um, but it takes a certain leap, a certain decision to go, you know what? Fuck that. I'm flawed. Or I know I've got room to grow. I want to improve. I want to allow myself to be fathered into a father. So it's about finding the supports, as you said earlier, maybe a mentor, someone that can help. Um, that's on that seeking some kind of support to get there.
Mm.
But I mean, my question to you is, um, what is it? Again, I want to come back to that. Like, what is it that you have liked to have known before you became a father, apart from your intention to become a father and your desire to become a father? That would have been helpful. That is, somebody's sitting there watching, listening to you, and right now wanting to hear something other than what we've said that's going to help them prepare for fatherhood. What would it be?
Mm. There's so many I find for me there's so many aspects because I became a father very quickly right after prison. So there was no gap. So for those that don't know, I went to prison for a year. It was like the life-changing experience that pushed me into like I need to sort my shit out. And but there wasn't a long gap between prison and child. There was like I think it was like 13 months from getting out to having a child in my hands. So there wasn't a lot of room for plus I didn't know that what I needed. So for me, it was just winging it at first. Oh, I'm gonna do this, and I was avoiding therapy. I was
Mm.
avoiding shadow work. I was avoiding inner child stuff or child stuff. I didn't have any anti-father stuff occurring. I think that's probably been my a blessing for me as I can see very much the gifts and blessings my dad has given me. There's some anti-father stuff, well, was anti-father stuff more around leadership. But I think in terms of like the question you asked, so I already kind of answered the first question. And what did I say? I said just not. Yeah, what did I say?
Well, I can't remember. But you know what? Just on that, the anti-father stuff that you're talking about, it's like you can have an anti-father, anti-our father, personal father, but we can have an
Oh yeah,
archetypal
yeah,
father, right? We
archetype
can
father.
have, yeah, an archetypal father is like holds the energies of authority. And how
Mm.
many men struggle with that, with
Mhm.
being led, with surrender to the father, right? Which is taking down the egoic mask, which says, I know everything. I think we all are damaged around that archetype. So I think every man's journey in life is to become an image of, let's throw it all the way out there, to God, right? In the image of God, man's made in the image of God. But to become that level of benevolence and devotion and generativity towards others is a constant tussle between your humanness, which is very selfish and egoic, and this kind of more divine approach to being such a giving, loving father to others, to devote a life to that rather to one's own smaller needs. is a lifelong journey. And I think there's a lot to work through in relationship to the father based on that.
Yeah, I think that's a like you said, it's an ongoing, constant refinement in that area, as there's always going to be these little nuances that we need to work with because it's like the battle that's going on. This is going on a bit of. I'm not going to take this off too far, but there's that battle between the patriarchy and the matriarchy. You've got the feminist movement. You've got all these things. You've got the Tates and all these other people that are like creating this very disjointed and disorientated view of the father, and that's within the collective. But to sort of bring it back to like the question of like, what could I have known prior? And I think, it was just like, even just what you just shared there, that would be a
Mm,
really good thing. Okay, well, there's fractures within the collective father archetype. It's like, okay, cool. So it's like, it's all good. It's all good that I'm feeling a little bit disorientated. There's doubt, there's resistance. Um, it's not wrong. I'm not wrong in that. I think that's a big one.
mm,
It's like, it's okay to be wrong and to feel like in that moment that you aren't you're not good enough because the reality is like you're probably not good enough or good at it because you're moving into it, you're trying, that's the thing you're moving towards. To just start off, I think for me was like the first was like, oh, I don't feel good enough, I don't feel ready enough, how am I going to do this, what's it going to be like,
mhm.
all I've been told is XYZ throughout my
Yeah.
life. The biggest one was be like, I wish I was given like, okay, like make sure I was already moving my body, but it's like, make sure you're moving your body. This is how you can deal with stress. It's like just like doing breath work or going out and getting in nature and like, and just, I think the biggest one for me when I would go all the way back was just like sobriety. I
Mm,
think for me, it would have been like
mm,
that I can see how much not being sober
mm,
from when I became a father, preparing to be a father and then becoming a father and not being completely sober. There was periods of sobriety, but there wasn't like it was like a year.
mm.
There was ongoing use of cannabis and like other drugs as well, and
Yeah.
then alcohol. And I think for me, and pornography, and I think for me, those that needs to be addressed because I think that's a big hinder to this archetype coming through. I think it dampens it, it numbs it. I wouldn't say disconnects you, but does look like it's disconnecting. I'm probably going to say it dissociates you from associating to the
Mm,
archetype.
mm,
And if someone could like if could have guided me through that,
mm,
I think my experience would have been different. But this is the thing, it's like you kind of touched it. It's like you need to go to therapy. You better move through that. You need to go find the right guide or therapist or mentor who can guide you through that because that is a byproduct of not having a rites of passage. They're just symptoms, the drug use and the pornography and all that sort of stuff. It's a symptom of not having been gone through a rites of passage or having someone take you through your shit and go, hey, these areas in your life that happened maybe when you're 7 and then 11 and then 3 or 4, whatever, they've had a detrimental effect on you and your psyche. And that's why this is playing out. And this is
mm.
what's in the way of you stepping into fatherhood in the way you want to.
Yeah,
So if
beautiful.
someone had said, giving me that, I think it would have been different, but I didn't have that because, I even remember, I think it was just after I became a father or just before, and I heard about mothers groups, mother circles for becoming mothers. I
Yeah.
looked fucking everywhere for a father circle.
Mm,
Look for a father's group, look for a father circle, and I was like really confused. I was like, what the fuck's going on?
mm,
And the only thing I could find was a all female parenting breathwork group. That's how I got into rebirthing breathwork. It's the only thing I could find that I was going to be like,
mm,
okay, well, this is going to have to do because I can't find anything to do with fathers
mm.
And this was before Instagram had more men's retreats you could poke a stick at
hmm
online.
hmm
This was like back when Instagram was photos and words. And I think now there's an abundance. I should be honest, there's no excuse to not have a mentor or a guide or a therapist. I don't personally think like this. There's no excuse not to.
hmm
There's no valid excuse anyway. Of course, there's an excuse, but there's no valid excuse that has any ground to not lean in because even there's some really amazing people out there that have very cheap entry level because that's just how they are. They might be like a Buddhist or more Buddhist or more leaning into that sort of like
Yeah.
um, lower fee because it's part of their religious philosophy.
Yeah. I mean, I think that mentoring is essential throughout life for all sorts of things. Uh, and whether it's a paid mentor or somebody in one's life who's older and an
Mm,
elder who's walked the path to be able to relate to, who has a healthy, benevolent energy towards you, that's going to nourish aspects of your soul in ways that you simply can't do by yourself. Um, so I hear you in that regard that mentorship's really vital.
mm,
Um, I think that, what pops into my mind is also this idea of developing the father, even if your child's at a distance. Let's say you've conceived and you've separated, or you're not together for other reasons, or this may happen. This doesn't mean that a man should drop the ball in terms of developing their inner father. Um, a piece of advice that was taught to me by a mentor early on was that it doesn't matter if the child's with you or not with you. They sense you. They sense you spiritually, sense you energetically, emotionally, psychologically. And so the openness and the benevolence of the father and the desire and the intention to provide and to love and to nourish the child, whether it's in person or at a distance, is still vital.
mm,
So for those men who may have even fathered a child up to a certain point and now they've lost them, can go down to the depths of a bottle or get despairing or come back to their old ways of womanizing or running around, running amok. Um, that's something I think that's important to realize that it's a lifelong relationship. It's a lifelong connection. And if
mm,
if a man does not want to father their own life and for themselves and for their projects and for their
mm,
community, then at the very least they need to hold their father towards their child, regardless of the actual living proximity
mm.
situation.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. It doesn't stop. There's the fathering journey doesn't stop. And I have met a lot of men that there's two sides. There's the men that you described where they go into the bottle and they start to womanize and they're like, oh well, I'm single now, and they cease that connection, that journey, and then
Mm,
they'll complain and whinge about not getting time or complain and whinge about, I'm doing all this, I'm paying support, but it's like, well, yeah, that's all physical, but
mm,
energetic.
yeah.
And then I've met the men that energetically they are doing all the work you could imagine, but it's just they may not even get access because the mother can't sense the goodness because of her own projection of the shadow masculine or shadow father type onto that person. So there's lots of like nuances in that whole area, but I think what you're speaking to is it doesn't stop. For me, it's taking me a while to really stay with the energetic aspect of the father archetype. I think
hmm hmm
it was very much oscillating between that energetic at first, and then it would be like then physical, then energetic, and it's taken a while for me to connect the two together because of all the shadow work I got to do. And you know, something else I was going to say there with what you said. Well, it's gone now. But basically, just that's what I was going to say. Like the way in which me and Igor are speaking, we're not speaking in this highly religious aspect of the father archetype. It's not like, and even though we're saying the Holy Father and God or the father archetype in this sense, yes, there's an association with that, but what we're speaking to is much more larger than just that, because there's fathers everywhere. Who fucking animals, for fuck's sake? There's fathers there. They display the same similar qualities as us. Just obviously, it's just different because they're animals. But if you look at gorillas, you look at lions, or you look at these these fathers that are in the animal kingdom, they very much still display a similar quality of encouragement, their fathering, their territory. They're there. They're not obviously animals aren't going off and smoking meth or doing anything weird like that, but
that we know of.
that we know of, who knows, right? You got to look at these
I don't know. I saw some possums the other day that look a bit
with
sus to
sus.
me.
So it's like, I think this archetype is energetic, and it goes from there down to the physical. If we can start to map what you said at the start, just begin to map this out, I think is one of the best steps you could do is
Mm,
like just start
mm,
mapping it out. Where are you at with it?
mm, mm.
Like it just being
And that's
so honest.
yeah, and that is what James and I have been talking about, and we're putting together a program for fathers.
Mm,
And that is kind of the starting point. It's like recognizing where the hell am I at, with the father, with my father, with how I father life, myself, my child, my to-be child, a potential child. Where am I at? What's my heritage? What's my ancestry? The understanding, the awareness of that. That's what I would have liked to have gotten. I think I did have that, and I was looking at it, but I think most men don't. And then to map out the territory where we're
mm,
going. It's like, okay, so that's where I'm at. Is that who I want to be? Like, what is defined as something that is a healthy father? What are the qualities? What are the traits? What does it look like, feel like, smell like, taste like, express like? And how do I connect from here to there? That's really the journey that we're constantly on. That's the growth journey, spiritually speaking, in life. It's not up the ladder in a corporate thing. That's a different thing, but it can also align with the development of the father. A
mm.
CEO who's in true empowerment over his company, his or her company, needs to have a relationship to the father, to benevolence, to wanting the others to grow, not to be a tyrant. Those are
Mm.
the healthier, I would say, companies. So that's what I would like to have gotten at the beginning, and I think you and I both agree on that.
Yeah, it's just like, here's the map. We started off, where are you at? And then the directionality of it, being a father or the for you. And it's like we're not going to tell you this is it, this is how you, because there's a lot of nuances through your circumstances. Some people have a business, a company, or they're the CEO of a big company, or they might be running. I was talking to a friend who he's a father, he's got three kids, and um, I was asking him questions because he used to run a tradie business and he had about 10 or 12 people working for him. And now he's got only like three or four because he wants to pivot into something else. But I was asking him how that was. And he goes, oh, it was exhausting. Like, I just felt like I was a father. I felt like I had 12 extra kids. And I was just like, I was kind of laughing because I didn't even have to get him to tell me that. But he's just like, that's an example. He felt like he was the father. He's having to tell them where they were going. You got to do this. This is what you've got to do. This is what you got to do. And then also supporting them. Some of them have got problems at home. Some of them have got things going on with family or whatever it is. And so I think this is where what we're offering you is it's for becoming a father. Of course, that's the idea, but it also will ripple out much further than what you know. And yeah, we're super pumped to get on the journey with whoever's excited to join. So
Yeah. And we'll probably talk about the actual offering at some point, maybe in a subsequent um, podcast in more detail. Hey.
yeah, totally.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think that's
yeah,
a good
yeah, yeah.
idea.
Yeah. All
Yeah. Do you
right.
have anything else more you want to?
Oh, there's always other things, but I think you've got a client, don't you, coming up?
Yeah, I've got someone
Yeah.
coming up. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All good.
Awesome.
Think you're good for today.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for listening,
Thank
and
you.
I will chat to you all soon. You.